All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ compels you.
This is my boomstick.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Hello, horror heads, and welcome to Shiver, a horror movie podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Daniel DeBona.
And I'm David Ulloa, and we've already got our first comment of the night. Number one fan, Frank Kowalski, coming in with a rump roast here.
Just some meat.
Love it.
The meat, of course, being very topical, as we are going to be discussing the movie Fresh. But before we get to that, in case you are not aware, Dave over here just had a new one. That's why we haven't been here for the past couple weeks. Dave, how's that baby doing, man?
He's fantastic. He's great. Thankfully, he eats very well and sleeps fairly well,
Nice.
and doesn't give us too much of a problem. So hopefully he'll start watching horror movies with us soon. And you got to indoctrinate them young.
Well, and you're gonna like hit that like spurt soon where you're up for like 2-3 hours in the middle of the night. That's like the best time to find just like that random like Netflix stuff.
Oh yeah.
Where you just like go to horror and you're like, that looks terrible, so you watch it. Like that's like the best time for it. So
That's how I stumbled upon Italian giallo movies. I was up at a very odd hour, and I was like, "What's on TV?" And I was like, "Suspiria, what's this?" And then I was like, "I can't go back to sleep now."
yeah, exactly. And now I'm gonna be awake for 72 hours. So but a movie that is not quite as scary as as a giallo film, but a decidedly modern horror. We're looking at the movie Fresh, and this movie takes a lot of things that are just completely and totally, contemporary. Like it doesn't just feel it's one of those things, it's such a risky game to try to make something feel contemporary because by the time it comes out, a lot of the stuff that they're doing in it is older, but like I mean, how did you feel about this? Like that contemporary feel, like does it work?
I got to be honest, I didn't know how I was going to respond to this movie when it was first suggested to me. My wife was the one who suggested it to me because I'm a fan of Sebastian Stan, who is obviously Bucky Barnes, the Winter
Bucky
Soldier in
Barnes.
the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and so she's like, "Hey, he's in a horror movie." I'm like, "Okay, fantastic! I'm gonna watch this." I saw the trailer and I was like, "Okay, it looks interesting," but my fear with movies that are so topical is that they will very quickly outgrow and like leave behind what it is that they're trying to talk about,
Right.
and then they become very dated very quickly. I don't know that that's going to happen with this one because the dating game has been so different for so long. I feel like this is a movie that touches upon a just the new way things are.
Right.
And there's also, I think, a lot of subtext to this. So it doesn't just cover that one horror. There's another horror that's going on here, which is the way we treat women.
Right.
And that's something that is unfortunately I don't want to call it timeless because that sounds good, but it's something that is everlasting, and it, no matter the generation, no matter the period, the time period, there's always been something to be said about the way women are treated. Women
It
are
does. It does seem to come up often, doesn't it? Like
yeah.
that is, I would venture to say that is the most reoccurring theme that we have approached as we've been doing this podcast.
Yeah, so it has something to say, and I think it says it in a new and fresh way, right? So I finished this movie and I was absolutely amazed. I thought it was an incredible take on an often explored topic, and it was done in a way that was terrifying in its own way. And even though the subject matter was quite gruesome, never approached the gross out genre.
Right.
So it handled things really tastefully, and it to me felt very modern and important without feeling woke, I guess.
There we go. I'll give you that.
There's that negative connotation with the word woke. I don't necessarily feel like that's a bad thing, but it's not preachy, I think.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I went into what I've been doing. So I know we've been off for a couple weeks. So if you're listening, we are still picking up our movies that are new to both of us. Premise for the month of May. We're gonna do this one and one more next week. But so I did the same thing with this one that I did, with the last one. I was like, all right, I don't know anything about this. I've never seen a trailer. Like I'm just gonna go into it without even watching a trailer. Right. I was like, all right, it's got Sebastian Stan. It's called Fresh. I've seen some promo photos that lead me to believe people are getting eaten. Right. Like that was all I really had. Because of the promo photos that I saw, which were very expertly taken from this movie to not give away what was actually happening. So kudos to their PR people. I had the feeling that it was going to be, I thought it was going to be a love story. And while there's half of a love story there, right? Like there's this one guy. But like, so in my head, I had already like storyboarded this whole movie, right? And I was like, oh, so she's going to like meet him and they're going to start dating, and then she's going to find out he's a cannibal, but she loves him so much that I seriously had like scripted this whole like romantic comedy in my head. Like I was gonna be like, oh, and then she's gonna like start eating people with him because that's how much she loves them, and then there's gonna be something they bond over. So what
a lovely story.
Thank you. Right. I absolutely created like the two humans, not a human and a zombie version of cold bodies in my or warm bodies in my head that this was going to be. So I was very pleasantly surprised when I learned that this was a straight up abduction horror.
Yeah.
With elements of, of those other things. Yes, there was some, Sebastian Stan, had feelings. And they were exploited, and that was spectacular. Like they definitely kept me guessing with this one a lot more than I thought they would. I really went into this expecting some sort of not great take on horror mixed with rom-com. And man, I for some reason, I had expectations to not enjoy this. And I guess that reason is because I'm not a romantic comedy guy. So even if you throw cannibals into it, like I'm still not really here for you, right? Like don't get me wrong. I'll watch How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Love it, right? Sure. Bring it. There's a couple of them, but I'm just not a rom-com guy.
Any one of the ones with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, I'm in.
Yeah, sure. My favorite show versus the volcano, though. So,
that's a good one, but that's very on brand for you.
Yeah. So I was pleasantly surprised. I really liked a lot of the things that this movie kind of put forward. I liked that it was gruesome without being overly gory. Like if that makes any sense, like the content was absolutely gruesome and just bone chilling, but it was never ridiculously gory until the very end when we were like, we deserved it at that point. Right. So I liked it, man. Sebastian Stan, the more and more I see this dude, just the less and less there is, I think he can't do. Because he played one role for 30 minutes in this and then an extremely different role for the rest of the movie, and did so convincingly for both. It was man, I liked it a lot. It was funny because I was texting Dave as I started it. He watched it like the day before I did, and I was like, I'm like 20 minutes in. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And he's like, Dave goes, how far are you? And I was like, about 20 minutes. He goes, just wait, man. He goes, when the credits roll, that's when shit gets real. And I was like, oh my God, I just realized I've been watching this movie for 20 minutes and there hasn't been credits.
Yeah.
And that is
I didn't realize until the credits rolled. I was like, there had been no credits. What? And it makes sense. That's when the movie starts.
Right.
Everything else, it's just, I mean, that's your appetizer.
Yeah.
Now we're getting the main course, and I think it's a great symbolic way of letting you know now the movie started.
Right. And so there were a lot of little things that I liked, and like I said, because of the fact that I didn't watch a trailer, I just built this entire movie in my head and was ready to be disappointed by it, and they got me.
Yeah, you're right. They did a really good job of kind of not overplaying their hand. So often we get trailers that blow their load.
Right.
We mentioned the Marvel movies. I feel like those are trailers where they show everything.
Oh, dude, I've Neri and I talked about this on Woobro last week, but I've gotten to the point where I will watch a first trailer, like a teaser.
Right.
And then I won't I don't keep absorbing the trailers that that come out constantly, especially for things I know I'm going to watch. I haven't watched the trailer for season 3 of The Boys. I know I'm going to watch that.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to see a thing about it. It's I know Jensen Ackles is there. Cool. I don't want to see a thing about it. But yeah, you're right. So many trailers now are look at everything that's cool. And it's would have been great to see that for the first time on the big screen.
Right. So one of the things that was present in the trailer was that this would concern dating, and specifically modern dating. Now, I was fortunate enough never to have to use a dating app. And I'm not that old. I'm 34 years old, but I married my high school sweetheart. And we met at a high school dance. Well, we didn't meet at a high school dance, but our first date was a high school dance.
Spectacular.
And
You're truly the Cuban American dream.
I am the Cuban American dream. Yes. Yeah. Yo soy el americano. So to let as much Cuban out as I can. So I never had to experience this. Now, Daniel, did you ever do the online dating thing?
I did not. The closest I got was when I was in college. It wasn't uncommon to have an AIM girlfriend.
Okay. Yeah.
And but those could have been people from anywhere that you never met. By the time Tinder, Bumble, by the time that stuff was around, I was out of dating. So I remember my very first podcast used to be a podcast called What's Good, and it had later evolved, but when it first started, it was a Taste of the Town podcast that I did with my friend Bill. And I'll never forget, we were standing outside of our buddy's house where we recorded, and he was like, dude, have you seen this? It's called Tinder. And he's like, and he just swipe like this. And I'm like, that's asinine. He goes, yeah, but the chicks on here want to bang. And I was like, what? When Tinder first, that's what people tend to not remember. That's what people tend to forget. When Tinder first came out, it wasn't a dating app. It was a casual.
It was the hookup app.
Yeah. And so I was like, you just swipe? And he's like, yeah. And he explained to me how it worked. And it was yeah, it pulls my Facebook pictures or whatever. And I was like, the features now, I guess. I don't know. I'm still waiting on an eyeball that gives me a HUD. So.
So this is something that I'm unfamiliar with. However, everyone has a friend, at least a friend, more than likely many friends, or you yourself are, in the online dating world. And I've heard horror stories, absolute horror stories. In fact, there are very few success stories that I hear about these apps. So and yet we've kind of accepted it as this is the way that you date in today's world. When I speak to some of my my women friends and they tell me what it's like, it's drastically different from what my men friends tell me.
Yeah.
And because like when I have a friend who's a man and he tells me about an awful date that he went on or an awful experience that he had with one of these dating apps, it's usually that the woman wasn't particularly pleasant, or the guy wasn't particularly pleasant. And although this does seem to be more of a straight thing than a gay thing. I don't know why. I don't know why, but I feel like gay people are more respectful.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe some of our gay listeners can correct me if I'm wrong here.
Ish comes storming in. I know plenty of assholes.
So, but I've heard the my friend will say, she was not great conversation, or she was kind of cold. She expected me to pay for everything. She was just mean or whatever. That's usually
right
the extent of the bad date. For the women that I know, the bad dates are much worse.
Right, like you're right. Like the women, when they're like, no, it wasn't a good date. It's like, oh, what happened? Like, the guy felt rapey, and it's like, wait, what?
Yeah,
Shit,
what? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he asked me to rate his penis.
Yeah,
and then he shoved it in my hand, like shit like that.
Yeah,
So it's weird, like just dark shit. And so I think it's ripe to be explored in a horror movie. And so I was like, man, this is going to be good, right? So this is a scathing condemnation of this scene, right? Do you think there was enough horror in that aspect, in the trying to find love in today's world aspect of this?
So
is this a horror story for you?
Right. So what's interesting about that is you're talking about the difference between men and women in this aspect, and I think that one of the very let me just put it out there on the table. This is probably the quickest dick we've gotten to date, right? Like actual picture of a dick, right? And so it's funny because I am sure there are a lot of dudes that were watching this that maybe don't have like platonic chick friends that are on these dating apps. And so to them, that was probably horrifying, right? It's like, oh, how's it going? Cute dog. What are you wearing? Bam, here's my dick. And I was like, whoa, right? But I know enough people that use these apps that like that's commonplace.
That's the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, but even if you like know that's the thing, putting it in a movie that people are gonna watch and like shining a spotlight on it is horrific in the fact that like I said, you got two sets of people. One who are like, why would they do that? And then you just got like every girl that's ever been on Tinder ever going, yeah, it's horrifying.
Welcome to our world.
Yeah, like I would venture to I would assume that most girls on Tinder have unwillingly seen far more dicks than they ever planned on. Right? And so I think
that's probably true of every person in the world.
Yeah, probably. You're right. You're right. I've seen way more dicks than I ever planned on seeing in my life. It's true. YMCA's, right? I mean,
exactly.
But so it's interesting because it's not horror in that particular part is not horror in the way that we usually think about it with like these supernatural scenarios or these slashers. Like it's horror in the fact that they took something that's awful about the real world and put it on Hulu. Right. And not just in a documentary. It's like, no, we're going to make it a movie. We're going to like draw them in. Right. And then we're going to show everybody how fucking stupid it is what women have to deal with on these dating apps. And so, yeah, like it was horrific because it was literally like, cute dog. What are you wearing? Here's my dick. Like that was the whole, and it's not like she was responding. Like it was just this guy having a conversation with himself. And it was like,
and she knew where it was going.
Yeah. She put her phone down.
Yeah, she put her phone down. She knew it was just going to be text after text after text. As soon as she saw what are you wearing?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and so it's horrific because it's like I said, the most reoccurring theme that we've dealt with. I mean, you go back when we did Fear, the very first episode I did was Fear Street, which addressed, what women have to go through, when it went all the way back to like the witches episode. And we've done Final Girl, and we've done Love Witch, and we've just done all of these things that are constantly addressing this issue. But it was really cool to see them. There was no subtlety to the way that they addressed the horrors of being a modern woman in the dating scene. And it was so stark and in your face that, I mean, it's kudos to them. I thought that was very well done. I thought that it was a different type of horror, but it absolutely was kind of horrific, because so you're in your 30s. I'm almost out of my 30s. I'll be 40 in a year. Take it back. I'll be 39 next month. But there's not that much between us. But it was always like you weren't ever supposed to like talk to strangers, and you weren't supposed to like. Then when the internet first rolled around, it was like never meet somebody from the internet, and now it's like the main way people meet. But it's just
Right.
it's just interesting now to be like, well, that still was good advice, because so many of the people that you meet on the internet are shit.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, we met on the internet.
That is true. Yeah.
Like
I've also never asked you what you're wearing and then immediately send you a picture of my penis.
Right.
I waited an hour. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. There was a good rapport, and it was like, this guy's ready.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and like I said, for what it's worth, I'm not, obviously we do this on the internet. The internet is everywhere, blah, 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 and not to sound all boomer about it, but it's, there's plenty of positive to come out of it, but it's like, I feel like it's a 50-50 split at this point, right? Like we've got all the information in the entire world at our fingertips, but we're also, me and you are not quite as close as most women are probably only 2 texts away from getting a dick in their DMs, like at all times. So, and yeah, that's horrifying. And I think that they did a great job with it.
I think that there's, for men who were unfamiliar with this, watching it now, like you said, maybe you don't have a platonic female friend, and you've never heard about this before.
Also, just by the way, I use the word chick, and I'm sorry if that offends anybody. I grew up on the beach. I use dude and chick. They're not gender neutral, but they are in no way offensive. Like when you said female, I was like, man, I said chick like 700 times.
You may not be aware of the fact that like this is a thing, that all you have to do is pay a dude just a little bit of attention, like a modicum of attention,
just anything,
and then it's like, hey, here's your, here's what you want. I know it's what you want. Here's a picture of my dick, right? And no one wants that. No one.
I've never once met a girl who was like, yeah, I've been talking to this guy. I just don't know how I feel about him. If I could only see that dick.
Right. So, to me, this is presented in the movie as, like a modern home invasion, because your safe space, which is your digital home, is being invaded by these men who have no regard for your privacy, no regard for what you want. They're totally imposing themselves on you. And I'm not saying that it's akin to rape, but I am saying that it is an invasion. It's an invasion of your privacy. It's an invasion of your morality. For some women, it's an invasion of if you don't want it, it's an invasion in any way that you don't want it.
Right.
And I think that's a genre in horror that's been explored so many times, but to see it explored in this way here is, I think, a new way to see it explored. And it starts with that very first date that she goes on, where the guy's a total dick, right?
Oh my
And it's
God,
really
like-
funny. It's really funny.
It's yeah, like while yes, that I'm sure that's horrific to like anyone who's ever been on a terrible date, and been on bad dates, just never because of Tinder. But like, God, that scene was so just like it was so uncomfortable. They did such a great job of putting you in that moment where it's like you just felt so bad for Noah and that dude. It was like they just took like every possible like douchey hipster like cringeworthy like meme and shoved it all into one guy, and I loved it.
Yeah, he was such a Chad,
Yes, yeah, that guy was a Chad.
Yeah,
Straight up and down.
he was a straight Chad, and for her to be like verbally accosted the way that she was when all she did, like she was saving him the hassle of the hey, so when's the next, I haven't dated since high school, like I said, but like I would think like, hey, thanks for saving me the trouble,
Right.
it's not working out, all right, thanks, for spending an evening with me. And the way that he just unloads on her again, we have another invasion.
Right.
We have an invasion of her of her personality. The way that he gets on her, it's so aggressive, right? And aggressive is, I think, the key term here, because whether it's being aggressive with your words or being aggressive with your digital self or being aggressive with a knife, you're being aggressive, right? You are an aggressor. And there's certain things that men do that they just don't realize. Or maybe they do and they just don't care, right? That like, this is damaging. You are damaging a person right now. And maybe it's because as a sex, our egos are too brittle to handle rejection. Who knows? I have no idea. I'm not a psychologist. I
believe that's the common consensus, though.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, TikTok has taught me a few things.
Yeah, exactly. I'm old, but I'm on TikTok.
I'm old, but I'm on TikTok. Yeah. I think audacity has something to do with it.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a term I hear thrown around a lot.
and again, that's another thing that if you're just if you're a guy who has who only dated even if you were younger and all you've ever done is dated your high school sweetheart and married him, and you've never been in that, and like I said, and maybe your circle doesn't involve a lot of single people or something, you might not be aware that while that was like stark and it felt really and it felt extremely harsh, because it was, what that was a harsh reality of what a lot of, from what Twitter has taught me, a lot of women go through when they try to just be straight up and down with a guy and just be like, yeah, it's not working, right? Like, I get it. I appreciate it. Tonight was tonight, but this isn't going to go anywhere. So let's call a spade. And that response of like, whatever, bitch, you're not hot anyway.
Right.
Like that seems to be like default response for these fucking red pill assholes. And it's just, it's so bizarre to me. Like, I was a fat kid in high school, right? I spent a lot of time getting rejected by chicks, and never once did it occur to me like, oh, well then fuck you, right? Like that never crossed my mind. Not once. Like, even once I got to college and I was still a fat kid and I still spent a lot of time getting rejected by chicks. Like, it was never once was it for me to be like, oh, you don't like, yeah, no, I didn't even like you anyway, right? Like, no, it was always like, all right, cool. Like,
right.
And so again, like, if you're not familiar with the fact that this is the waking nightmare that so many single women have to live in, then scenes like that I found funny because it just seemed like Twitter come to life might be horrific to you. Right. Like, I'm on Twitter enough that I see these types of things all the time. And it's just like, oh yeah, no. So these dudes are real. And then they put it up to, I'm like, they did the Twitter thing. But like, if you're if you're not familiar with this, you're like, why would anybody be like that? And by the way, if you didn't wonder why would anybody would be like that, and it's not because of overuse of Twitter, then you're the asshole. Like, let's just go ahead and if you thought that was like an emotionally appropriate response, go ahead and turn us off now, because fuck you, we don't like you.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and just delineate from that part of anybody who may be in our podcast. Like, if you thought that was an appropriate
one deserves
response,
to be treated that way,
then you can fuck right off, because we're done with you. So it's just it's fascinating. You know, like I was talking about Fear Street earlier, right? Fear Street addressed the idea of the witch panic and looking back at this, and then brought it to terms in a way that was real, and we could kind of look at it in modern terms. This was amazing in the fact that it took something that is so modern and made it far more public, right? Like that's the horror element of what we got there. Is it was like, hey, this happens, and if you didn't know, then be horrified and make sure that you aren't this guy and you're not friends with this guy. Because you're right. Like I have friends that are in the dating scene, and to the best of my knowledge, when they talk about bad dates, it's like, it just wasn't really working. We weren't into the same thing, like, yeah, I dig that, right? Like, find the right person. But like, just let one person I know be like, oh yeah, she was a bitch, right? Like, she told me she didn't like me. Like, that doesn't make her a bitch, dude.
No,
she just doesn't like you, right? And so it's just fascinating to see these things that, when you live in the internet, we're out there. But if you're just somebody who just kind of is in the general realm of the internet, you might not understand it is out there. Like, it's really cool to bring that to light. And we were talking about how easy it is to make something that you're forcing the modernity into it, how easy it is for it to feel stale. But in keeping with the fact that they titled this movie correctly, all of those things felt very fresh.
Yeah. And the thing is that the horror of dating, I think, even though it's obviously there's commentary on what the modern dating scene is,
right?
But the horror doesn't stop when she begins when she meets a guy in a more traditional way.
Which, by the way, I will never forget my dad telling me when I was coming to college. My dad was like, you're not going to meet the best chicks on campus. You're going to meet them at the grocery store. And so, like, that was like, my dad was like, wrap it up. Meet chicks at the grocery store, do your homework, right? Like, those like the three things my dad sent me to college with. And so with
sage advice. Yeah.
Honestly, I hope to pass those 3 tips along to my son when he goes to college someday. Honest to God, all 3 of those are really good tips. But I loved the fact that when she did meet the guy who ends up ultimately being the worst guy, because we can talk all day about the fact that Scarf Dude was an asshole, but at least he didn't eat her in a not good way, right?
Yeah.
And she met him at a grocery store. So you look at it, it's like, well, shit, now I can only suppose that as a woman in America, it's not safe to meet anyone anywhere.
And I think that that's part of the horror here, is that if you're a woman in America, like, you're never safe. There was one thing that she did, which, I remember the first time I heard it, I didn't understand. And then I heard it more and more, and I was like, oh, so this is just something that you do all the time.
Yeah.
Walking to your car with your car keys, like, through your fingers, like Wolverine, ready to just like stab someone. And the first time I heard that, I was like, oh, well, that's, really, for real. And then the more I heard it, the more I thought about it. I was like, well, holy fuck, yes, you are violated. I mean, in every possible way. You have to prepare yourself for this.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'll never forget the first time I had a discussion with somebody about the concept of the male feminist, right? And I had a friend of mine who was like, I she was like, I can understand where you posit yourself as a male feminist because you believe in all of these things. She was like, but it's a concept that she was like, but that idea of inequality is something that you can never fully understand. And I was like, I mean, I get it, right? Like I talk to people, I hear things. She was like, no, she was like, because you'll never understand what it's like to have to walk to your car in a parking garage. And because you hear footsteps, hold your keys between your fingers like that. And so when she did that in the movie, I was like, oh my God, like that's the exact scenario that like that was given to me as something I would never understand. And so it was just it was interesting to see it up there because like I said, the first time I had that conversation with somebody, that was the exact example they gave me.
And so we see that constantly throughout those first 30 minutes of the movie. We know as the audience that there is something off about Steve.
Right.
But because he's so disarmingly charming,
which, he disarmed me too.
Yeah, I mean, look at him, but that's part of it.
Right. Yeah.
You never think that it's going to be the good-looking guy.
Right.
It's like, well, he's good looking. Why would he? It's never going to be the charming guy because, well, why would he? And he uses this to his advantage. He's the ultimate predator. And so where is a woman safe really? Nowhere.
Right.
And that horror of I'm preying on you. And her friend Molly, like, what's his Instagram? Well, he doesn't do social media. Red flag number one.
Red flag, yeah.
But you're so enamored with this guy being the antithesis of all these other guys that you've been, having so little success with, that you're like, hey, this has got to be what a good dude is. Yeah. And you're not seeing all these other red flags, and so you're throwing yourself into this so quickly. That's scary. That's really scary. Let's say that they don't really establish how long a time period it was that they were together, but it had to have been only a couple of weeks before they go on vacation. At most a couple of weeks. So, how do you know that this person that you're spending all this time with, that you've invited into your home, that is sleeping in your bed, how do you know that you're not going to wake up chained somewhere?
Yeah.
You really don't. You really don't. And I, as a dude, don't have this fear.
Right.
You as a dude don't have this fear.
Correct.
But all women have this fear.
Yeah, it's a really bizarre thing. And like I said, as my friend Kelly pointed out to me, like it's something that you can hear about and you can side with, but you can never really fully understand. South Park actually did an episode, it was about race, but it was the same similar lesson, right? It was like Stan having to admit to Tolkien, like, I'll never fully understand, but like, I'm here for you type thing.
Right.
So, but as we discussed, the fact that this addresses just the concepts and the ideas of the horror that is the modern dating scene, that really only goes for the first 30 minutes of the movie. Mm-hmm. What we get after that is a straight up abduction horror where we find out that the reason he's been so charming and so wonderful to her is that he's going to kidnap her and he's going to keep her alive because there are a lot of really rich people. He refers to them, I believe, as the 1% of the 1%.
Yeah.
Who are willing to pay ridiculous amounts of money for human meat. And that the meat is better when it's fresh, hence the title of the movie. So he's got to keep them alive. And so we get this entire storyline of Sebastian Stan as a guy who abducts women, slices pieces of them off, but knows how to like cauterize them and everything, because he apparently actually was a doctor or a plastic surgeon before he got into the human meat business. And yeah, I know
it's an up and coming industry.
As I said it, I was like, I'm just going to keep rolling with this. Like, that's a real thing. And so there's a lot of subtext here, right? Like there's just the overt horror of somebody might kidnap me and sell my thigh to an Asian man with a lot of money. I'm not being racist. There was an Asian man eating the humans in the movie. but like there's that overt horror, but there's a lot of subtext here to the way that it was presented to us, the people who are doing the buying, the people who are doing the selling. The way the whole thing works was presented in a way that I think you would have to be extremely tone deaf to miss out on. So when you're looking at the subtext here, like how did you read into the undertones of the horror in that second 2/3 of the movie?
So let's say that I was totally blind.
Fair.
Or 100% dumb. I think that this would still work as a movie. I think that it was still compelling, and it was a great thriller. Now it becomes a horror movie, I think, when you start to really read into it. And I guess that's what we would call an elevated horror movie these days.
Right. That's what we've talked about with a couple, right? Like that idea of finding a new level for things.
For me, the continuing aspect of this is the horror of what it's like to be a woman in today's world shifts from this is what it's like to be a woman in the dating world to this is what it's like to be a woman preyed on.
Right.
And I think that one of the most subtly horrific things that we see in this movie is and it's tied with a scene where we see Noah being the survivor, right? Where she has decided I'm going to have dinner. I'm going to use the fact that he likes me against him so that I can try to escape somehow. And he serves her a breast. And he says that it might taste familiar, right? We know that this has happened after he has abducted Molly. The suggestion here is that this is Molly's breast, right?
Yes.
You caught on to that as well, right? It's not just
yes.
me.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay.
I firmly believe that it was Molly's. Yes.
There's and then we see another scene later where like she's gotten like thrown around the kitchen and she's holding her chest. So like this is where her wound is, and we see everyone holding themselves differently. At the end of the movie, what we see hobbling away is a woman who's missing her breast or breasts, a woman who is missing her leg, and a woman who's missing her ass.
Yes.
These are the body parts that women are like sublimated to in society, right? We often say, well, are you a boob guy, a butt guy, or a leg guy?
Right.
And so to see these three survivors represent these things, like this is what men want.
Oh, sorry.
Your cat?
This is our tiny cat, and she's pissed with me right now that like the chair that I'm sitting in doesn't leave her a lap to be in, and she just slipped and clawed the crap out of my thigh. So I'm trying to adjust her, but I'm listening. Yes, sorry.
We see them running away, and like this is what men like just boil women down to.
Right.
Their parts. And it's these specific parts that have been taken from them because it's what men take from them. It's what the men want. Every single one of the people, these Satanists, as we come to find out, right? Because every plate has that symbol of Baphomet. And there's was it Baphomet? It was Baphomet.
Right? No, it was. Satanist is a weird word, right? Like it's, but yeah, like I mean, I get that. That's the
imagery that they're using.
Yeah, the connotation and the imagery that they wanted to portray.
Right.
It's just that
it's not fair. It's not fair to Satanists.
It's not fair. It's not fair to Satanists. That's kind of what I'm getting at, right?
To what Satanists really are.
Right. But
again, I think it's symbolic.
Yes, no, it absolutely is. It's just when you said it, that was like, that kind of irked the shit out of me, right? Like, like it's. I can only imagine it's the way that somebody who firmly like believes in Wicca feels anytime they're just like, she's a witch, and like that's like the whole plot twist. But anyway, I'm not actually a Satanist. I empathize with a lot of things they do.
Yeah, well, I mean, and anyone who truthfully has ever studied what the Church of Satan is about would know this.
Right.
Human sacrifice is not something that they're
Correct.
into. They're not cannibals. But we see this with them. They're all men. They're all men, and so they're subjugating women to simply being their parts, right? And when he's asked by Noah, when Steve is asked by Noah, why just women? He says women taste better. And I don't think it's that women taste better, because I could never tell you. Now, I haven't eaten meat in many years, but I couldn't tell you when I ate a boy cow and when I ate a girl cow.
The one minor like adjustment I would give to that, while I do agree that the reason they threw that line in there was because of what you're getting at, I am not a hunter. I don't like getting up early. I don't like the cold. I don't like being quiet. I'm no good, right? Like, but I do know plenty of people living here in Alabama, working in Brookwood, who hunt, and they do say that when you get a doe, the meat is better than when you get a buck. Like, you get bucks for trophies, you get does for meat. So
That's interesting.
So there does seem to be a little bit of logic there, but I do believe that the reason that they did it in this movie is what you're getting at now. But I'm just throwing that out there before somebody, slides that's in the DMs to be like, female meat is better. Calm down, Chief.
Well, yeah, I'm not a hunter either. So this isn't, but I could never have told you when the animal that I ate was a male or a female.
Right.
I wouldn't have tasted the subtle differences there. For me, that was one of the most important subtexts going on here, that like we relegate women to their parts, and we'll take those parts from them. They don't belong to them. They belong to us.
Well, and I think another important piece of that exact puzzle that you're putting together is the fact that it's not like he was just shipping these people, a ribeye and saying it came from a girl. He was also shipping them their underwear, pictures of them. Like, it was obvious that there was not only women taste better, but that there was a male crowd that was into this, because you're right. It was relegating women to the body parts that we look at them, but then also making sure that the parts of the things about a woman, or the parts of a woman that you would ogle, are also included in it, right? Like, they made you think, it's like, okay, not only does this guy want to eat a girl's buttocks, but also he wants to sniff her panties, right? Like, it was that same thing. But that's because when you are a person who boils a female down to just a sex object, what do you care about? You care about boobs, butts, and thighs, right? Like, and legs, and you care about what they're wearing, which was presented to us earlier in the movie when we got the stark text of "nice dog." Okay, now what are you wearing? So then we're reminded that these worst people immediately just want to know what a woman's wearing, because it's important to these guys that are paying buku dollars for these boxes, because that house that he lived in was dope. Yeah. Even if you just remove like the dungeon, right? Like, it had.
And this was his second house.
Yes, exactly. He had like a normal house with the family that he lived in, and this one was.
Oh, and that's another thing I want to get into.
Yeah, with just a full ass house with a dungeon, but it had like this really cool like 70s swinger vibe. Yeah. And it's like, but like, so obviously he's making good money, because he quit. We can't stress enough, he quit being a plastic surgeon to do this. So there's obviously money in it. And so all these guys that have all this money, what do they want? They want to actually like eat a body part of the girl, but they want to know the most intimate parts of this girl, the most sexual parts. Intimate's not the right word there. Sexual is the right word there. They want the most sexual parts of this woman. And that's a picture of her face, her underwear, her lingerie, whatever it may be that he convinced her to pack for this trip to the cabin. And so you get that, and there's that subtext. But there's also this really, and I mean it's not covert. It's just the secondary subtext here, which is just the idea that we live in a world where money is power. And if you have enough money, you get what you want. And we, like I said, they weren't. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't even. It almost wasn't even subtext, right? It was just like I said, he referred to him as the 1% of the 1%. And hold on, throw up Frank Kowalski's comment here, because he's absolutely right. This is what I'm getting at. He says that one meatball was $35K. Just imagine the pounds of meat Steve sent to his clients. Absolutely. He serves Noah one meatball, and he says that's about $35,000. And it was literally a meatball, not a plate of spaghetti with a bunch of meatballs. It was one. And he says that's $35,000. So there's also this interesting idea presented in this movie that just says, if you got enough money, you get what you want. End of story. Like this is how my brain works, right? Because I can only imagine that if Jeff Bezos wanted to eat a human, that it would not be that hard for him to find somebody that would sell him a human body, because to eat, because
the
Jeff
fucker
Bezos
built a cock that shot off into space.
Exactly.
He can eat a human if he wanted to.
I'm willing to bet Jeff Bezos has eaten a person before. I'm throwing that out there.
Heard it on Shiver first.
You heard it on Shiver first. Jeff Bezos ate a person one time. And so, but there's just this interesting, it's hack to do a movie where money equals power. It's interesting to do a movie where it's money equals get whatever you want, even if that's not power. They do these really bizarre montages of the people that he sells to. Right. And there's the one guy, he's an Asian businessman or a gangster or something. There's the one guy who it's like chopped up like dog food, and he's got the collar on and no shirt. Like they do a good job of being like, rich people do all sorts of things.
Right.
But when it comes down to it, like fuck the 1% of the 1%. The 1% are dickheads. Right. And so I have no problem believing that there's a percentage of them that like to eat people and that there's a market for it. It's just fascinating to kind of see somebody attack it like that. Right. To just throw it out there. And we've seen lay it on the line like that.
Similar concepts before. Like what was this movie? The Most Dangerous Game.
Right.
The rich will always.
Are you talking about The Pest with John Leguizamo?
The rich will always do things simply because they can,
right?
Because there's a level of wealth that a person can attain where they're now untouchable, and where nothing is exciting anymore. And so what can be exciting? Well, I'm going to pay you to let me eat you. Or I'm going to pay you to let me hunt you.
The Purge
that sort of thing.
it.
Yeah.
The Purge was like, sure, there are people who just get out their frustrations, but look, rich people throw parties and pay poor people so that they can murder them guilt-free. I mean, it's something that's always that has been addressed before, but it's just it's something I'll never grow tired of seeing in a movie. That's what I'm saying. Like anytime it can be thrown on stage that the uber rich are probably the worst people in the world, then I'm going to lap that up, because that's just me.
There's one other thing that they went into in this movie that I found fascinating, and it's what some women have to do to survive. For some, that means living with Stockholm syndrome, where you literally have to convince yourself that you're in love with this person, this abuser, this captor, to survive, because you cannot accept the situation that you're in. He tells her this. He was like, you have to accept the situation. And if you cannot, you convince yourself that, well, you're in love. You convince
Right.
yourself that this is romance and not violence. We see a hint of this with Penny. I think it's when Noah comes back after she's had her butt cut off, and Penny says, but he can be kind of sweet though, right?
Right.
And I was like, oh fuck. Like, Melissa clearly has already lost her mind. Penny's well on her way. And then when we meet his wife and she's missing a leg, I don't think that was from birth. I don't think that was from an accident. I think the suggestion here is that she was a victim who worked her way, who found that she could exploit him and became his wife, and then somehow got in on the enterprise, because it's either that or she is also suffering from Stockholm syndrome.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and you can, like, I just kind of got the, once I saw that she only had the one leg, I was like, okay, so she was a girl that he abducted and then kind of flipped him. And now she's just, and then once you find out she's part of the whole situation, it's like, okay, so dollar signs turn this broad, right? Like that's, she's living that American dream. They've got this cute little house and all their, all their bathrooms, and everything's just spectacular. They're somewhere in the suburbs. And if the price to pay to live what, I'm going to throw out a magazine name here, and I don't know if it's right or not, Cosmopolitan tells you is the American dream, then the price to pay is to just understand that your husband sells human meat.
Right. The other form of survival that we see here is self-sacrifice. Noah has to completely, like, turn on everything that she holds dear and eat human meat.
Yeah, and
to survive,
to like it,
and pretend to like it, and she does this because she knows that this is her one chance at survival. Now, I think it would be awful stupid to say that there's no chance that men are abused, and there's no chance that men have to deal with their own shit in the dating world. I mean, obviously, stuff like that happens too, but on the scale that it happens for women, there's no chance. There's absolutely no chance. So this is a uniquely female horror movie.
Yeah.
And it's one where I think you have to be able to like disassociate yourself with your sex and your gender if you're a man watching this movie to really appreciate the horror. And if you can, I think that there's a lot to find scary here. And it is something that can be eye-opening for certain people if they're willing to let it be.
Right. And that was something I kept falling back on, was the fact that there were elements, there were a lot of elements that I found horrifying in this, but I kept falling back on that idea of, like, man, how many people are going to watch this and find it shocking?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I'm not just talking about, like, shocking in the concept of, like, oh, I fed you your friend's boob. Like,
right.
But like we went back to at the very beginning, like, how many people watch this and are just shocked that some dude just sent an unsolicited dick pic, right? Like, that's a fascinating element of this movie to me. Is I wish that there was a poll out there was like, did you know that this happened? Like, right? And like a bunch of dudes on Twitter could be like, no, I would never do that. Like, I can't believe it. And whether or not they were lying, at least I'd have some numbers
right
on how many people found that shocking.
So this kind of is a good segue, I think, into our final section here, which is Steve himself as the villain, right? He is a rather charming villain, right?
Yes.
And he's not alone in that category. We have seen other charming villains before. Guys like Hannibal Lecter. I think that he kind of channeled a little bit of that Hannibal Lecter there.
I can see it.
So how does he stack up in the pantheon of horror psycho killers?
Right. So you're looking at what was the name of that? Brendan, right? Like he was Steve,
Brendan, Steven,
yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
So you're looking at this guy, and we've made no qualms about the fact that Sebastian Stan's an attractive man, right? So you're looking at this guy who's attractive, he's charming, he manages to spark up a conversation with a woman in the grocery store about grapes. He does it all right.
They really do taste like cotton candy.
Right, exactly. It's like this whole thing. He's got this touching story about his niece, and well, let me at least get your number. So when I tell my niece this story, like I'm never gonna do anything with it, right? But when I tell my niece this story, I can be like, yeah, and I got this girl's number, and he checks all the boxes, right? And so it's such an interesting thing because you're right. Hannibal Lecter is absolutely the shortest line to draw here. You've got this guy who, and even with the original Silence of the Lambs, like Hopkins has got nothing on like modern day Sebastian Stan, but charisma, that's just looks. When you look at charisma, these guys are like God tier charisma players. Like these are guys who understand exactly what they're doing, and it's psychotic in the fact that every word and every movement and everything is calculated to an excruciating detail.
Mr. Kowalski just came and said Steve actually meets Noah while she stands under a fresh meat sign. Very nice detail. I hadn't noticed that.
I did not either, because they were like in the vegetable area because they got the shower and they made the joke about it. But the level of calculated that we get out of Steve is, if he didn't kill and sell people, you would say is admirable. Right. Like, and there's the cat again. She's very interested in what's going on. There's something about the way that Steve conducts himself, even when he's okay. So they go to the cabin and he mixes her up a drink, and she makes the mistake of not watching him make her drink, and she passes out. And also an interesting like idea was when she woke up and didn't immediately think something had gone wrong, right? Like she woke up and was like, "Oh, I slept."
Yeah.
But then he's immediate. I drugged you. You're chained up now. I'm gonna sell you for meat, and it's so calm.
Yeah.
Right. There's nothing to it. Right. Like when you look at kind of the dictionary definition of a psychopath being somebody who has no emotion, like that's when we realize that he's kind of at that level. And so, man, it's like I said, I think that Hannibal Lecter is probably just the absolute best line that you've drawn. Like I've been trying to kind of think of other people that I would put on the same level. John Doe from Seven kind of falls into the same type of thing where he's so pragmatic and everything makes sense in his brain. So it doesn't matter if it's criminal or if it's violent or if it hurts people. Like I can kind of put him on that level of psychopathy where it's just he's making money. He sees what he's doing. He's eventually kind of broken down by somebody who does reach in and find that emotion, but which also kind of happened to Hannibal Lecter. Depends on if you're going by the movie or the book theory, not theory, story. So it's just.
I also got hints of psychologically similar to this character, but Annie Wilkes. in Misery. The fact that he's
yeah.
holding her against her will, that he's trying to make her see that like there is a purpose for her
But also
being
it's because
there.
of how much he likes her.
Exactly. Yeah. To me, there's psychologically there's a direct line between Annie Wilkes and Steve.
Yeah, okay, that one makes sense. I like that. Yeah, it's just he's in we're so used to seeing the killers in these movies, even once they're kind of revealed, still unravel. And it's safe to say that until he had been, just beaten until he was almost dead, Steve really held it together.
Yeah.
Like we never like the only unraveling we saw of him was not because of his own psychosis eating him alive inside, or however that story's supposed to go. It was just because now he was just getting beaten by people he thought he was better than.
Well,
And so
he had the same thing done to him that he had been
right.
doing to the women, right? Because she ate him. She bit off his
Yeah.
manhood. She made him no more.
Mm.
Yeah. I don't care how evil a guy is. I always feel for him when
Look,
something like that happens.
This and the movie Teeth both
Oh,
involve
what a great movie.
just incredible. Future episode, I'm sure. The movie
Yeah.
Teeth, people, come on. But this and the movie Teeth are two movies where very bad guys
Yeah.
get their dicks bitten off.
Yeah.
And while I feel no sympathy for them,
Mhm.
I physically feel their
Oh, of course.
pain.
Yeah. No, the phantom pain is real.
Very much so.
Yeah, no, I turtled crazy when that happened. I'm like, no. You go inside so that no one could ever cut you off.
No one.
No,
This is where you live now.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, if we're using the symbolism that we always like to talk about, right? Him losing his manhood, right? His penis is him losing what it is that makes him a man. He is now effectively, right? He's been feminized. He's a woman now, and he can't handle that. He can't handle that now. He is the very animal, right, that he has been hunting. That he's the very animal that he eats, right? He says he doesn't eat animals.
I
He
love
eats women.
that line, by the way. Like when because they're sitting there eating and he goes, "No, I don't eat animals." And I went, "All right, well played, because I see you, because you do eat meat, but
Right.
you don't eat animals." And I know where this is going, and that was a very well placed line.
Yeah, so it was that's when there's that psychotic break in him, when he is no longer a man. And that's to go back to like the fragile ego that men have, right? We place so much value on our penis, right? So much so that we have to send it to women unsolicited, right? Like, hey, what are you wearing? Here's my dick, right?
Because it is all that makes you virile and powerful, right?
Right.
And so when she sees it, she's just going to lust after you, which I can only assume is the theory behind sending unsolicited dick pics.
And now that it's gone, that's what there's an immediate change. It's like a switch has been flicked, and he begins to whine and complain, right? Noah, come back. It's a totally different. That's a totally different person.
Yeah, there's also this really just going back to the horror elements that are wrapped up that are involved in being a woman here. There's also this really interesting idea of the fact that his wife was, because of the fact that we can only assume that she's a survivor of all of this, she was very aware of the fact that his, let's call it a lifestyle, led him to constantly be meeting new young women. And there's a scene where she's looking in the mirror, and I kind of half kept expecting her to like be wearing someone else's face or something, right? But
yeah, it was weird.
But like when it kept going, I was like, I really think that that's just her being super self-conscious of the fact that this guy's into younger women. And if she starts to look old, then how long is it before she becomes the next meal that he's sending out? But I did have this moment where I was like, is there going to be a scene where we find out she's wearing one of his victims' faces? Because if so, it's done with a face-off level of expertise.
Yeah.
Like if that had actually been like one of his victims' faces that he had put on his wife, like I don't know how this dude wasn't making enough money being a plastic surgeon.
When when you really are committed to a lifestyle, it's not about the money. You
Right.
know, love what you do and you'll never work a day in
Work
your
a day.
life.
That's what they told us when we started teaching, folks.
Oh yeah.
And that's what they tell us every year when it rolls around. Like, you don't really get a raise this year, or you do, and it's not equivalent to cost of living. But hey, anyway, it's a rant for another day. But anyway, it's just when you look at Steve, it's so bizarre because until that moment that she bites his penis off, what we get is one of the most calm and collected people that we've ever seen presented on screen as an obvious psychopath. And we've done a lot of slashers on here. We've talked a lot about the fact that we fall back on the slasher because they're fun. And Steve is the antithesis of the slasher. And not to say that like a Michael Myers isn't calculating. The dude's never ran ever. But he's Steve is he's out for it's not about the kill for him at all, right? Like we find out, because he specifically mentions like, I'm cauterizing your buttocks so that you don't bleed out. Remember, I used to be a doctor. And then we see these women that are missing body parts and stuff. And it's like, this is solely a dude that's driven because you're right. Like there comes a point where you probably have enough money. This is a dude that's just kind of driven by liking doing it. And the sexual element of actually being interested, because we do find out that he doesn't sleep with all of these girls.
Right.
Because they make a big deal when the other girl's like, oh my gosh, you actually got to have sex with him. Like,
She's like, oh, I'm not slut shaming you.
Yeah. Like, I'm not slut shaming you. Like, that's great. Like he's not a bad guy. And so, that he's not just like bang him and then sell him. Like it's so there was something with Noah that led to all this, but this is a guy who obviously has it all. And this is kind of where he goes with it. And again, we go back to that 1% idea of like, if you got enough money and you do it right, then you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So it's just, I mean, he's a fascinating character. It was presented very well. But so now we get to the point in the show where we like to rate the movie. Now, if you're new to the show or if you just need a quick reminder, I would like to tell you that we only rate a movie against itself. So when we look at each movie, we create a unique rating system. And I will go ahead. I'm gonna give you some behind baseball on this aspect. Normally, when Dave and I create show notes, when we get to rating, one of us will suggest like 5 different rating systems for the movie. And then we debate and we pick one that we think is the best. This is the first time this has happened since I've been on the show. Dave sends me show notes, and there's only one suggestion for what the rating should be. And it was so perfect, I just had to be like, yep. So, Dave, out of a possible 5 familiar tasting boobs, what do you give the movie Fresh?
Man, I'm stalling right now because I still don't know
Fair,
what
I'm
gonna rate this. I like this movie a lot. And the more I talked about it, the more I liked it. Like I was thinking when I first saw it, I was like, man, this was really good. Maybe this will get like 4 stars. And as I was writing up the show notes yesterday, I was like, oh man, maybe this will get like 4.5 stars. I'm having a hard time thinking about why it shouldn't have 5, but I'm also having a hard time thinking about why it shouldn't be 4.5 instead of 5.
Same boat.
So
we're rowing together here, Chief.
yes, I don't know what would promote it from 4.5 to 5, but I also don't know what would demote it from 5 to 4.5. So I think I'm going to err on the side of caution here, and I'm going to go 4.5 out of 5, because if I can't quite figure out what makes it perfect, then maybe there is something missing. Right. And maybe it's not that there's something missing, but maybe it's just that it's less perfect, because we have given a number of 5-star, not 5-star, but 5 whatever ratings before. And maybe there was a point or two in the movie where I reached for my phone to catch up on my correspondence or whatever. So
What are you, a Civil War general? Dearest Stephanie.
But I did enjoy it a lot. I foresee myself recommending this movie to a lot of different people. The fact that, as we said, it was gruesome without being gory. This is the kind of movie that you can sell as a thriller to those that are not really horror heads, and you can sell as a horror movie to those that are. It's pretty great. I just can't figure out why it's not 5 stars. So for that, I think it's going to be 4.5 familiar tasting boobs, which is 1.5 more than the woman in Total Recall had. And I think that's quite a feat.
Right. I mean, because let's face it, for most of our lives, that's been the gold standard.
Right.
I can't think of a way to reword anything you said that would make it any better, because that's exactly where I realized I was as we've been recording. There's some sort of X factor that's missing here that's going to keep me from giving it 5, but I can't put my finger on it. Right? Like, so I can't think of a reason to not give it 5, except for the fact that that doesn't feel right.
Right. Yeah.
And so I understand exactly what you're saying. I think that we're presented with a very modern take on a classic idea of a horror movie villain. I think that we are presented with a lot of very subtle horror things while also being given some very over-the-top horror things. I mean, that chase scene through the woods at the end and just everything they go through with him and his wife and just trying to survive and all of that stuff is so good. Like, I can't see myself not, if anybody comes to me and is like, oh, I'm looking to watch a scary movie. Like, is there anything new out? Like, I can't think of anybody who comes to me with that idea that I wouldn't suggest this to. Mm-hmm. But there's just something that feels like it shouldn't be 5. So I'm going to go right there with you. 4.5 familiar tasting boobs. Because it was so good. And I didn't know if I was going to go that high kind of until we started talking, but it was very good. And also part of my rating is coming from the fact that I was ready to be disappointed by this, and I wasn't.
So there you have it.
We got Kowalski's racing over here.
Oh yeah, here we go. Oh wow,
Kowalski got above and beyond.
A full on 5 out of 5 familiar tasting boobs. He says, "I love the background music, Radiohead." Yeah,
maybe that's where the half star was lost for me.
I love the ending with Paul dipping from the cabin and having the women save themselves, while at the very end, Chad texts Noah. That was another thing that I thought was great. Paul, the bartender, in a moment of absolute realism, drives up and hears absolute chaos going on, right? Gunshots, pop, 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 people screaming, and he says, nope, And he gets back in his car, he drives the fuck away. And that's a very real thing. And I think also goes to reinforce that message that women can't rely on men.
Correct.
They have to save themselves. I did think that as wrapped up in a neat little bow as that was there at the end, it was real nice to see the women save themselves and to be the heroines in their own story.
Not
to
have
not
them
have
white-knighted.
What's that?
Not have them white-knighted.
Exactly. Not have them white knighted and just have them be bad as fuck women.
Also, at the risk of sounding just a little prejudiced about this, did you get Theo vibes from that dude? Like, did he remind you of Malcolm Jamal Warner at all, or am I just standalone in that? Like when he first showed up, I was like, I know that's not Malcolm Jamal Warner because he's older than that now, but this dude kind of looks and sounds like Malcolm Jamal Warner. Like I get Theo vibes from this.
I didn't as I was watching, but now that you mention it, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. He did have a similar way of carrying himself.
Yes, because like I said, it wasn't just that he looked like him, like the way that like he talked and like his mannerisms. I was like, man, this dude's a lot like Theo. Anyway.
So there you go. 4.5 familiar tasting boobs. You heard it here first on Shiver, your horror movie podcast. And if you enjoyed this, you can check out other Geek Bro Network podcasts like What's Up Bro, Mount Geekmore, Better Let Me Tell You, Seasons, a TV podcast, Kick Flicks, Crimacopia, a dose of Ellie, Comedy Fitness. And you can find them all where, Daniel?
You can find them over at geekbro.net, where all of those shows are located. You can also head to shiverpod.com. That will take you to our section of geekbro.net. One of my summer plans, if you're new to the show, Dave and I are teachers. One of my summer plans is to kind of overhaul what shiverpod.com is. So keep an eye out for that. Mm-hmm. Also, if you head to TeePublic and you search for Shiver Pods, you can find all of our merchandise. Shiver Pod will take our amazing logo and they will put it on anything. So make sure you head over there and check that out if you like the show. All of our social media is at ShiverPod. We try to keep up the interactions on our Instagram. We've met a lot of fantastic people out there. And so in that note, I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there now. We're going to be posting it up to our Instagram in a little bit. We are going to stretch Month of Movies That Are New to Both of Us out one more week because of the 2 weeks we took off. And next week, we're going to be doing The Platform. I'm super excited about that one. While I kind of know the concept of it. I've seen a lot of people say amazing things about it. But after we do The Platform, we are going to start what we are calling our Shiver Summer Fan Fest. And what we'd like from you is if there's a movie that we have not done on this show that you would like us to do, and you would like an opportunity to be on the show, then all you've got to do is have a webcam, a decent internet access, and to message us. Tell us what movie we should be doing. We've got a couple on deck already, so if you're thinking Child's Play or Evil Dead 2, can those. We're not exactly sure when they're happening, but those are two that have come to us already. We're going to be posting it up to our Instagram.
Jeepers Creepers 2 as
Jeepers
well.
Creepers 2 is the other one. Yeah. There we go. So if you are interested in being on the show, and especially if it's because of a movie that you think we should definitely do that we have not done yet, hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at ShiverPod. Send us a message. Tell us what movie you think we should do. I don't need an essay. Just be like, oh, I would love it if you did The Thing, and I want to be on that episode, right? And that's all it's going to take.
We haven't done The Thing.
We haven't done The Thing.
What a great movie.
So if there's a movie out there that you love enough that you want to talk about it for 90 minutes, you want to be on the show, and you want to see us do it, at ShiverPod on Instagram and Twitter, you send us a message. We're going to take June and July, and we're going to make those movies happen. Because ultimately we couldn't do this. Well, we could do it, but we wouldn't have as much fun doing this if it weren't for the fact that there were people out there watching, listening, and enjoying it.
And Mr. Kowalski comes in with a frozen emoji. I think he's excited about the thing.
Yeah. So if there's anybody out there that really wants to do the thing, message us and let us get you on that episode because I'd love to do the thing.
Absolutely. So on behalf of all of us here on Shiver, fright you very much.